What's going on, guys? Welcome to this episode of the Total Fight Mike. My name is Danny Gutierrez. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, this Thursday of November, we will have Total Fight Challenge at the Swanson Center at Bedford Park, and tickets are still on sale. You can get them at the door. The doors do open at 7 o'clock, so please do not miss this. There's a lot of, there is a lot of young, local, new talent. A lot of amateur guys. This is a stacked card, so please show some support for some guys trying to make it in mixed martial arts and combat sports. Excuse me. I do have a Megalo Box t-shirt on, and I do have my Batman comic book with the X-Men bookmark. I know, how blasphemous, and Chael Sonnen playing in the background. I wanted to talk about this weekend's past fights for UFC 244 in Madison Square Garden, and it took place with some crazy bouts. The main event was awesome. The events that took place for the main event, first of all, the entrance was pretty cool. It wasn't Israel Adesanya cool, but it was still pretty, excuse me guys, it was still pretty chilling. It was very chilling. It was very cool. You saw Nate Diaz coming out. He had like 3 or 4 songs that he was coming out to, and you're like, oh. And then you hear the Eminem song that he actually comes out to, and he starts pumping, and he starts getting ready. And then Jorge Masvidal comes out, and he's got the Scarface theme song going on, and he's looking all fly, and he's skipping to the octagon. And they get in there, and just what unleashed was just utter chaos. It was utter chaos. Jorge Masvidal was able to drop Nate Diaz with a series of punches and a kick that actually landed. As Nate Diaz was getting up, rising back to his feet. Excuse me, guys, sorry. I just had an apple. I do have some slight acid reflux, so bear with me. Apples are very acidic, especially the green ones. I apologize. But in any event, Jorge Masvidal was pretty dominant throughout that entire fight. He just had sharper boxing. He was very, very light on his feet. He kept utilizing a body kick that kept finding its mark from orthodox position to Nate Diaz's southpaw. Now, you'll hear Joe Rogan talk about this a lot, especially in the early days of his commentary when he sees Anthony Showtime Pettis, mainly because he has a Taekwondo background similar to Anthony Pettis. So when you have a orthodox fighter going up against a southpaw fighter, usually what your coach will tell you to do is that you want to be very diligent with your right hand, almost as if you were utilizing your jab. Even if you could switch stances, or if you could go southpaw for southpaw, or if you could even keep your right hand very active, your dominant hand very active, you're going to give the southpaw fighter a lot of problems, because that southpaw fighter is banking on the opponent, to utilize the jab, and their cross or their right hook is something that's very deceptively quick and accurate for a jab, because they've been training it over and over again. That's something that orthodox fighters aren't necessarily used to. But when you have somebody with pretty good kicking range, and you have somebody who's very diligent with that right hand, that right side is open, because their left side is back, and that left side is open. That left side is back, but that left side is open. Usually you would want your front hand to protect you if you were a southpaw fighter, but Masvidal being an orthodox fighter, and his right side being able to land on Nate Diaz's left side or his center, it left a lot of weapons open for Jorge Masvidal. What's up, Grayson? In any event, Jorge Masvidal was pretty dominant throughout the fight. Ultimately, it went 3 rounds, and it ended up being stopped due to a doctor's cut. As soon as the 4th round was about to start, the doctor came in and said, all right, there's too many cuts here. The fight's got to be stopped. So they stopped the bout. Everything all right, dude? All good? The bout was stopped due to a doctor's cut. Now, a lot of people wanted to see it keep going. I was thinking about the Tyson Fury fight as well, and then Dana White came out with the post-fight interview saying, they didn't stop the Tyson Fury fight. That's exactly what was going through my mind, because that was a pretty bad cut. That was a really bad cut. It was a bruise on a cut, and Tyson Fury was doing everything he could to open it up, or to protect it and to keep it from further opening up. However, excuse me, sorry guys, I do get seasonal allergies, and I was never really one to do anything about it, to take medicine or pills or anything like that. I just drink tea and deal with it. So, but regardless of that, Tyson Fury's cut, he was doing his best to protect it, and it was a cut on a bruise, and it looked pretty bad. However, and this is just my argument, when you have cuts in mixed martial arts, they're a little bit more devastating and dangerous because of things like ground and pound, which is something that Jorge Masvidal was very successful in this fight. Even though Nate would try to initiate a transition to the ground, even though Masvidal would slightly oblige him, he would oblige him with elbows and strikes and punches and ground and pound, and he would sit on the knee in half guard, and Nate Diaz's half guard, and then just position himself in a way where he could posture up and land some pretty nasty ground and pound, where he's out of the way of hand traps or wrist control, hand control from Nate Diaz, because that's what he would want to try and at least try to get some offense going on the ground. Because Nate likes to use those legs to kind of wrap his opponent's limbs and look for an arm bar or a triangle choke from there, or at least transition to the back or to the mount and look for a reversal. But Jorge Masvidal was way smarter than that. You really saw the intelligence of Jorge Masvidal, the choices that he made throughout the bout, especially if you know jiu-jitsu, especially if you know how dangerous Nate Diaz is, how game Nate Diaz is. Jorge Masvidal was not playing it safe, but he was playing it smart. He was doing what he did best, but he was doing it in the most intelligent way that he could, and that's what you do at this high of a mixed martial arts level. Ultimately, he is a BMF, baddest motherfucker. He gets the title. The title does look really nice. It does look pretty bronzy. I was thinking it looked kind of like more of the old school, like UFC 1, kind of like that gladiator, Greek pillar looking. It looks real nice, but I do remember, was it Caroline Pierce was with Dana White, I believe? There was somebody with Dana White backstage, and he was kind of explaining that it had a Raiders feel, and I didn't really see that until he said something about it. And it does kind of have that, that 1990s, Raiders look to it. It does look pretty cool. But regardless, it was an awesome night. That night was a lot of fun. To kind of get away from Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz, as awesome as that bout was. Ultimately, as I said before, Jorge Masvidal won, and he was hanging out with one of the Fabulous Four from 80s boxing and Roberto Duran throughout the entirety of the night. They would like to get a rematch. I don't know if you can constitute a rematch because of how dominant Jorge Masvidal was, but Nate's always game. The Diaz brothers are always game. Nick got a title shot off of a loss to Carlos Condit, but a lot of people felt that Nick arguably won with the pressure against Carlos Condit in their interim title fight. Condit got the title fight. They ended up both losing to GSP because GSP is GSP. So, yeah, to kind of transition into boxing a little bit. I know I didn't cover this last weekend or the weekend prior to previewing and reviewing the bouts previous, but this past Saturday on November 2nd, we did have Saul Canelo Alvarez taking on Sergey Kovalev, who's fought Andre Ward on two separate occasions, And Canelo Alvarez has fought a litany of guys. He just got done with a title fight with Daniel Jacobs. He's fought Gennady Golovkin twice. Actually has shared 24 rounds with him. Shared 12 rounds with Floyd Mayweather. Canelo Alvarez and Sergey Kovalev fought this past Saturday. They didn't exactly go head-to-head with Jorge Masvidal in the Nate Diaz bout. However, it did take place in Las Vegas, Nevada, right after the pay-per-view event at UFC 244. You could have rolled over on the DAZN and watched Kovalev throw down with Canelo. Canelo was moving up to from super middleweight, which is 168 or 167, I believe, depending on whatever the contract states. Whatever the contract states, going up to 175 pounds, taking on Sergey Kovalev. That is light heavyweight. Again, the weight classes in mixed martial arts compared to boxing, I mean, you can compare them when it comes to the name of the weight class. Yeah, the mixed martial arts, they kind of borrow a lot of the weight class names from boxing, but they're not numerically identical. So, for example, light heavyweight for mixed martial arts standards is 205 pounds. In Japan and in Pride, they called it middleweight, and I believe that was 200 pounds even, or 202 pounds, something weird like that. But when you look at cruiserweight in boxing, cruiserweight's flat 200 pounds, and that's what Evander Holyfield was a champion at before he moved up to middleweight, started lifting the weights, pumping iron, and moved up to middleweight. That's what Steve Cunningham was a champion at. He's a gentleman that fought Tyson Fury. He actually scored a knockdown against him, was the first guy that scored a knockdown against him in Madison Square Garden. But I digress. The weight classes in when you compare them to mixed martial arts and boxing, they're identical in name, but not numerically. It's a big difference in numbers. But regardless, Canelo Alvarez took on Sergey Kovalev for his light heavyweight title, and here's the thing. A lot of people were going into this fight saying that, Sergey Kovalev was getting old. He already had his best fights with Andre Ward, and that kind of put him over the hill a little bit. Andre Ward retired undefeated, Olympic gold medalist, had a very first close fight with Kovalev, made significant changes, very drastic changes, and came back and stopped Sergey Kovalev in the eighth round of their rematch bout. And I believe after that is when Andre Ward ultimately retired. So Sergey Kovalev had fought one more time after that. I'm so sorry. I'm forgetting the gentleman's name, but he was dominated. He was getting pieced up. He was getting outclassed pretty much, and people thought that was the beginning of the end for Kovalev when it really wasn't. He had another close bout, which he actually came back and won in the later rounds, and that's what constituted this bout with Canelo Alvarez. That and Canelo Alvarez wanted to be the fourth Mexican to win the championship bouts in 4 different weight classes simultaneously across the board. What makes Sergey Kovalev so special is that he's got a pretty educated jab. It's very accurate, it's very laser pinpoint, sharp, it's fast, and he's got a good right hand to go along with it. He's a very long guy, and he is Russian. So when it comes to Russian style of boxing, they usually like to utilize crosses to the body. Not always. Usually they like to utilize crosses to the body and then hooks to the head. So the idea is that you get when in boxing, when you block, you block with your elbows. Depending on who your coach is, you block with your elbows and you turn your hip and you kind of lead the punch away. But the detriment to that is that you kind of leave your temple open. You kind of leave that side of your face open unless you tuck your chin. And in that heat of the moment, you're just going to try and look for the body shot so you could block it or parry it. Sergey Kovalev is very long, he's very fast to where he doesn't necessarily need to do any of that in close. And he's usually longer and taller than most guys, which was the case here. He was significantly taller than, I believe, 5'7", 5'8". Canelo Alvarez could be 5'9". Canelo Alvarez was significantly shorter, so he would have had to utilize the more Mexican style mixed with the Russian style of boxing. At least that's my opinion. Mexican style of boxing loves to utilize real hard forward pressure. A lot of hard forward pressure, significantly hard forward pressure. If you look at guys like Julio Cesar Chavez was all up in your face. He never gave you any room. He never gave you any time to breathe, and his punches would come in bunches. It was hooks to the body, hooks to the head, uppercuts. He'd get in that clinch position up against and push you up against the ropes and just wail on you from the body, from the rib cage, around the arms, all the way to the head, with his uppercuts and his hooks right through the gloves. It was pretty frustrating. It was very frustrating. After Canelo's fight with Floyd Money Mayweather, after Floyd Mayweather outclassed him, Canelo Alvarez changed his style up quite a bit. He utilizes a lot more head movement, a lot more tight footwork. He does put forward pressure on fighters way more. However, he cuts off his opponents rather than follow them. So he will kind of step to the side of where his opponent's going to be rather than kind of chase them down and follow them. He's utilizing the Philly shell a little bit more. He's blocking more. He's made way more educated decisions when it comes to his championship bouts. Sergey Kovalev looked a little tentative in this fight. It looked like he was trying to set up his right hand or his lead left hook, but couldn't. He was utilizing the jab quite a bit, but Canelo Alvarez was successfully blocking all of those shots. And basically what it came down to was his patience. He was looking for the right shots at the right time. Canelo Alvarez did land some pretty decent hooks. He landed his left hook that was landing over and over again. It would land at least once or twice per round. Ultimately, he stopped it in the 10th round. He dropped him with a lead hook in the right hand. The lead hook is what made Sergey Kovalev do the dance. It gave him the stanky leg. It gave him the stanky leg. He had no idea. Kovalev had no idea where he was, and then that right hand, right underneath the armpit, which is something that Anthony Joshua likes to do, put Kovalev to sleep, and the referee waved it off right away. As soon as, not as soon as, usually when a boxer drops like a sack of potatoes, the referee does not need to count. There's no count necessary for a boxer that just falls. It doesn't seem to be conscious at all. But yeah, it was a pretty masterful performance by Canelo Alvarez. Sergey Kovalev, what's next for him? I think he really should retire. He looked really good. He didn't look outclassed. He just got caught with a couple good shots that were sized up and set up by Canelo Alvarez. So, things like that happen. It's boxing, folks. It's boxing, and it's pretty impressive when you have Canelo Alvarez, who moved up a weight class significantly, and he looked pretty good doing it. He looked unblemished doing it. He looked really good doing it. But I digress. Excuse me, guys. Sorry. I know guys are gross. I'm disgusting. Sorry about that, folks. But again, like I said, thank you guys so much for tuning in to Total Fight Mike. Again, Grayson. It's okay. It's the mailman again. Grayson. Shh. It's okay. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode's Total Fight Mike. Again, click the like button, hit subscribe. It really helps us out when you do. This Thursday, we will have Total Fight Challenge. On November 7th, we will have Total Fight Challenge at the Swanson Center in Bedford Park. Alex Keka will be defending his TFC lightweight title. It's going to be fireworks, folks. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys in the sequel. Peace.